Hello, and thank you for joining us. This is No Soundbites Allowed, and I am your host, Michael Voss, Dragon of the Southern Tier. I'm happy to be here with you today. It is December 2nd, approximately 3 a.m. in the morning, and I'm up this early because something was bothering, something that I wanted to share with you. Just a couple of days ago, I received a poll from Yougov on socialism. How popular is socialism in the United States? Which made me have a question. What is the difference between what most people think of as socialism and progressivism? What is the impact of social and progressive policies on the United States, not just domestically, but around the world? I think this is an important issue to discuss as we go forward into 2023, and we will have a stagnating government that may not be able to get to accomplish many of the goals we would all like to see done. So we're going to address this a little bit in just a moment, but before we get started, I do want to mention, if this is the first time that you're seeing our channel, we welcome you and we thank you for being part of our audience. We want you to know that we do long-form political commentary, and every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we do a live stream with you. We reach out on all the social media that the internet overlords will allow to be able to get your tweets, your chats, and your phone calls from anywhere in the world to tell us what you think about the issues that are affecting us all around the world. Because we believe in the First Amendment. We believe in your right to free speech. It is not just for Americans. You should be able to question your government and the issues that are affecting us all. And so we hope you will join us, even if your government does not agree, even if the internet overlords aren't happy about it. We hope you will join us every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. to discuss whatever it is that you think is important. So what has kept me up in the morning? The question is socialism, which actually brings up another question altogether. What's the difference between progressivism and socialism today? Now, there's a lot we can get into that, but I want to stick to a general view of this and what we can see easily in the news media. And to be able to do that, the first thing I want to do is go backwards in time a little bit, back to 2008. You may remember this in 2008.
It's been a long time coming, but tonight, because of what we did on this day, in this election, at this defining moment, change has come to America.
Change is coming to America. It's interesting that he said that, because it's what he didn't say that I think is very important. And we spoke about it then, and we've spoken about it since. Change into what? President Obama had his slogan, transform America. Transform America into what? It's a very big question. You're going to change. What are you changing? What are you changing into? What are we transforming into? It's not enough to say we're going to change things. You have to say, what are you changing and what is the next thing? What is the outcome? What is it that you will change to? Because if you're changing from a Ferrari into a Yougov, that's not a positive change. If you're going from a rich and powerful nation to a third world nation, that's not a positive change. Now, people were taken at the time by the emotion, but we've long since had that emotion come and go. Was it worth it? Well, a lot of people would say no. Now, one of the things many people said at the time as well was that this was socialism coming into America, that Barack Obama was a socialist. In fact, it was on ABC News, May 5th of 2010, as President Obama was putting the finishing touches on Obamacare, the American Care Act, a piece of legislation that would place the government in charge of health care for millions, tens of millions of Americans, that would allow the government to decide what health care you could or could not have, what you are going to pay for, and how you are going to be treated. I know You may recall that President Obama said for many years, repeatedly, that don't worry, you'll be able to keep your doctor with Obamacare. And then in 2013, we learned that was the lie of the year. It wasn't true. Even in 2010, so many people thought that Obamacare was socialist that ABC News had to go out and tell you that it isn't a bad thing, that it wasn't negative to say that President Obama is a socialist. In fact, they said, calling President Obama a socialist may not carry the punch some of his opponents had hoped for, given a new poll that found Americans are, quote, not so negative, end quote, about the word, and young people have essentially the same feelings about socialism as they do the word capitalism. It's interesting. They said further, young people, the survey found, are more positive about socialism and more negative about capitalism than are older Americans. This is a Pew Research poll. And in that poll, they found overall 29% of respondents say they have a positive reaction to the word socialism, while 59% react negatively. Well, that's a huge statement there. That's a lot of Americans. Almost a third of Americans, almost a third, especially the youth. The youngest Americans were the most interested. Those under 30 had the strongest reaction to the idea of socialism. Where would they get that idea from? Haven't our schools been all about progressivism? Haven't they been about the liberal ideas taught by their teachers, their colleges? And quite honestly, there really isn't much of a difference between being a Democrat, being a progressive, and being a socialist. In fact, we now have many people who are democratic socialists, mixing this line even more so. Some of them are quite famous. In fact, when we look over the list of just a small list of some of those best known democratic socialists, well, that would be Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Bernie Sanders, Rashida Tlaib. Now, you may say, well, they're democratic socialists, but I thought Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, isn't she a progressive? Bernie Sanders, isn't he a self-avowed communist? This doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But the fact is, they are. You're not wrong. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is a democratic socialist. Rashida Tlaib is a democratic socialist. They are also progressives. And they are also socialists. Just like Bernie Sanders, who's a self-avowed communist. There is no real functional difference. It is the wording that is used at any given moment to allow them to do well. In fact, we see this from, well, no other than AOC herself. Going by the June 1st, 2018 interview on Politico, Ocasio-Cortez discusses Democratic Socialist label. And she says in this article, it's part of what I am. It's not all of what I am, she said on Meet the Press for NBC. And I don't think that's a very important distinction. So she's a democratic socialist. She is a Democrat. She is a progressive. These are all interchangeable terms. She's all of the above, all at the same time. And she's not the only one. In fact, if we look at the list of Democratic Socialists of America, not including the Ithaca chapter that believes in violence, but just in general, we'll see that there's Rashida Tlaib, Cori Bush, Jamal Bowman. There's a lot of people. There used to be, John Conyers used to be part of this. Individuals that were considered Democrats or are often considered progressives. They're in fact socialists as well. In fact, this term is so interchangeable, you wouldn't be able to identify who is who. Looking at the Congressional Progressive Caucus, which is chaired by Representative Jayapal, you see many, many interesting names. Ilhan Omar pops up. You know who she is. Well, what about Barbara Lee or Jamie Raskin? Sheila Jackson Lee, someone I know many people, she's been around for a long time in politics. You would think she's a Democrat. No, she's actually a progressive. Rashida Tlaib, as we had mentioned before. But there are more people. Cori Bush, as we've mentioned before. Ro Khanna, Mark Takano, yet another name that you've probably heard before. Of course, Jamal Bowman, but there goes Bernie Sanders, also on that progressive listing. And then we go into the House members, including Karen Bass, even Mr. Hakeem Jeffries of New York, who is now going to be the minority leader for the Democrat Party in 2023, replacing Nancy Pelosi. Hakeem Jeffries is a progressive. He is also in the Democratic Party. See, the party is the big umbrella, and these are individuals inside that umbrella who have different factions that they believe in, that are different slivers of that. The smallest sliver may in fact be communists and or socialists, but progressives, which make up about roughly 7% of the Democratic Party, they're the ones in control. Hakeem Jeffries is now going to lead the party, but he's leading it in a progressive direction. Is it going as far as the Democratic Socialists would like? Probably not. But it's further to the left than the average Democrat has always been. The pendulum for Democrats is swinging further and further to the left, which brings us closer and closer to socialism and communism at every single step. Now, I'm not going to say that this is like being part of the Chinese Communist Party. No, I'm not saying that that's where Democrats have gone yet. The Communist Party, which in its first iterations in 1921, well, it was a revolution and a nationalist party and a socialist party. And let us not forget that most of the nations that have used communism, have moved towards communism, well, they're all socialists. Let's see, the USSR, otherwise known as the Soviet Union by most people, when it existed, it was actually the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. There is no difference. While definitions may be somewhat different, they are effectively the same thing. In fact, when we take a look, we know that BLM was created with the idea of socialism, of communism. Patrisse Cullors has already admitted that she created this, that she is a communist, and that she created BLM to encourage more black people to become socialists and progressives. And we've seen from Resilience, a left-leaning source, which is telling us today's progressive movements must learn from BLM and join together and become more progressive. And in fact, going through their, literature, they tell us that progressive social movements operating in the United States today are all the same. That people fighting for climate justice, peace, gun control, the full freedom of people of color, immigrants, women, LGBTQ, AI+, economic equality, civil liberties, educational opportunity. Did you notice every single one of these issues is something that Democrats are championing and saying that they are leading the way on this, that these are all progressive ideals that are being taught in our colleges? This is all socialist. They're interchangeable. And they use whatever term is the most popular at any given moment to be able to get a better reaction. Because it's definitely not the classic sense of what a progressive is. In fact, if we look at the definition under Merriam-Webster, a progressive is one believing in moderate political change and especially social improvement by governmental action. There is nothing that is moderate about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Bernie Sanders, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, Jamal Bowman, or Hakeem Jeffries. These are not moderates. These are fringe, far-left elements in our government. We're looking to have extreme change. Even Barack Obama was not a moderate political change. Or to quote Barack Obama, transforming America, fundamentally transforming America. That is what the modern progressive is, not what they're defined as. This is how they are moving forward. And there is no difference in their actions between progressive or socialist or communist because they're all interchangeable. And we have seen that their interactions have led in many cases, going back 3 years, we saw that they would go onto college campuses and mob individuals who disagreed with them. Remember at Binghamton University when 200 members of Progressive Leaders of Tomorrow, which is also known as PLOT, a far-left socialist progressive organization closely tied to the local Democratic Party, that they went out and they mobbed 3 conservative students at Binghamton University because they didn't like what they were saying. They threatened them. They tried to intimidate them. It made national news. And that's why, even at this moment, Binghamton University is under an investigation by the Department of Education. They are under lawsuits that are still continuing to move forward, even as we speak. While the rest of the news media has forgotten about this, this case is still going forward, and we are still following it. This is what progressive and socialism is. And I think that's important to understand when we look at the poll. What is socialism? Well, socialism in America today, progressivism in America today are interchangeable. They are just merely different words meaning the same idea for political movements. And while socialism may be gaining some positives in terms of the word, progressive is far more acceptable. Just like liberal back in the 1970s was far more acceptable than socialist or communist. The title is changing, but the underlying themes and thoughts and ideologies are not. And they result in the same kind of effect. But we are seeing this movement. Now, you can go to Data for Progress, which is a left-leaning source talking about the positives of socialism and progressivism, and you can see that the younger you get, the more positive the view of socialism is. Over and over again, going from the silent generation, World War II, to the baby boomers, Generation X, millennials, and to Gen Z, we are seeing this trend towards socialism being a positive idea, most often because it's used as progressivism. That we're being told that this is the progressive idea. And in case you think I'm misunderstanding that, this same source, this is Data for Progress, their mission, Data for Progress, is a progressive think tank. The progressive think tank are the ones who are telling you that socialism is a positive and that it is gaining strength. Again, that's their program. That's their ideology. This is the progressive think tank. There is no functional difference. Looking at, this is a report from 2020. This is from the Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation. And they were doing an annual poll. This was the 5th annual poll of U.S. attitudes towards socialism, communism, and collectivism, which are all the forms of communism. Different words, but still the same ideas. And what they found was that 40% of Americans at that time in 2020 had a favorable view of socialism, up from 36% in 2019. 2019 was the year that the mob at Binghamton University attacked 3 students for just being conservatives and expressing their voices. Generation Z's favorability is 49%, up 9% from 2019. Think about that. In 2008, Barack Obama, in 2010, according to ABC News, the favoritism of socialism was at 29%. By 9 years later, it was at 49% amongst Gen Z and 40% for the nation, almost doubling itself. That is an incredible increase. Was that the change that President Obama was promising us? Was that the fundamental transformation of America that he was talking about ushering in? A majority of Democratic voters now prefer socialism to capitalism. Well, why wouldn't they? Because they've now been told for over a decade, almost 2 decades, maybe even more, they've been told consistently socialism is being part of the Democratic Party, is part of being progressive. They are interchangeable. They are all the same thing. And we saw this in August of 2021. Democratic voters find it's all the same thing. The poll taken between August 7th and 10th showed that 59% of registered Democratic voters who participated had a positive view of socialism compared to 49% who felt that way about capitalism. Well, think about it. We've heard from BLM, Antifa, we've heard from the far left, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Cori Bush, Ilhan Omar. We've been hearing from the squad. We've been told how capitalism is a negative thing. We've heard that from Nancy Pelosi. We've heard that from Chuck Schumer. Remember, Obama said, well, you didn't build that. The government built that. They tried to take away everything you have done and said the government did it instead. The government is more important. And at the end of the day, what is socialism? What is progressivism? What is communism? It is the state, the government, having more power than you. It is the state being able to control both businesses and individual lives, and you have less and less freedom and ability to choose for yourself. That is essentially what it comes down to. Now, here, even in 2022, we can say socialism has gone down a little bit to 36%, but so has capitalism. The overall view from Pew Research shows that 57% of those who have taken the poll found capitalism to be a positive term, while 36% had a positive impression of the word socialism. Both have reduced. That's not a positive for anyone. Most importantly, though, those who are 18 to 29 voters, the youth who just came out of our colleges, just came out of our high schools, 44% found that socialism is a positive term. It is a positive ideology. Only 40% of those same 18 to 29-year-olds had a positive view of capitalism. But it should scare you that we have so many more young people, and that has been increasing over time, and we see no reason why that's going to stop. And as we said, Hakeem Jeffries is part of the reason why this isn't going to stop. He is now the minority leader in 2023 of the Democratic Party. A progressive is in charge of the Democratic Party. He is a splinter faction of the party. If you go out and ask your average American walking down the street, some 30-40% of Americans are Democrats, some 30-40% of Americans are Republican. If you ask your average rank and file Democrat, are you a progressive? They would say no. If you look at their leadership, it is. They are progressives, whether they've told the Democrats that or not. Hakeem Jeffries, when he's going for election, he's going on the thought that he is a Democrat. He's on the Democratic ticket, but he's a progressive. And progressives promote socialism. I know some people are going to say, well, Hakeem Jeffries isn't that bad. I mean, look at this. He's the guy who said that Tara Reid, who accused Joe Biden of sexual assault, that this needs to be investigated. Yeah, he said that in the past. He hasn't said a word about it now. He has no follow-up on that. That was just political maneuvering. It was the popular thing to say when Me Too was the issue at the time. This is now the man who is in charge of the Democratic Party in Congress. He's going to be leading the House of Representatives for Democrats, and his policies, his ideas that he is putting forth are so far left, so repugnant to Democrats that nothing has a projected success rate. Look at this. 5 Democrats support him, 5 co-sponsors, 17 co-sponsors. There's 435 members, voting members of Congress. Over 200 at this moment, well over 200 at this moment, are Democrats. He has nothing. There is virtually no bill that he has ever put forth since 2013 that has had widespread acceptance amongst Democrats. Now, I've said all of that to bring us to, and I thank you for staying with me to understand this fundamental thing. We saw that President Barack Obama is a progressive. He has progressive ideology. He has pushed that forward. He learned that progressive ideology from back in the 60s, his teachers, Bill Ayers, individuals who are radical leftists. And he brought that idea that capitalism is bad and to transform America from a capitalist society into a socialist one. He brought that into America. He transformed America. And through that transformation, he invited the youth of America to join him on a path towards progressivism and socialism. And he helped to support the fledgling BLM in 2015 to make it what it is today and having the capability to destroy our cities across America in 2020 as they did. So that's important to understand that that's where we're going. That's where we've been. And this is the trend that we are continuing to see with Hakeem Jeffries going forward. Why is this a big deal? Let me take you to this. This is what got me here, that made me want to talk about this, this is the Yougov poll that came out on the 30th of November. And in taking this poll, we see that 60% of people said that they believe and that they found capitalism to be a positive. Only 24% had a more positive view of socialism. That doesn't match the numbers that Pew is giving us. That doesn't match the numbers we've seen even during the time of Barack Obama, as reported by ABC News, but it is an online poll, and YouGov polls tend to skew to the left more often than not. So maybe this wasn't popular, or maybe the time I took it was too early. We don't know. But according to the poll, these are some of the politicians that the majority tend to believe are socialists. Bernie Sanders, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, Kamala Harris, Barack Obama, the same list of individuals that I've already shown you that already have admitted they are progressives and they are socialists. Now, one of the things about this poll that I thought was so interesting that needs to be discussed is the poll says, and in your opinion, would adopting more socialist policies create more or less poverty in the United States? I believe 53% of the people who took the poll at the time said it's going to create more poverty. The majority of Americans tend to agree with that. Given the examples we've seen in Venezuela, Cuba, North Korea, China, the former Soviet Union, look around the world, look at your actual socialist nations, your progressive nations, and the more progressive they become, the more impoverished the people are, the more oppressive the government is, over and over again. Do you think innovation, for example, in medicine, business, and technology, has a better chance of flourishing in the United States under capitalism or socialism? Well, the answer is capitalism. We know that from historically, Russia, which was Soviet Union at the time, they were the leading communist nation in the world, and they didn't advance technologically. They didn't lead the world in any innovations. They did increase and maintain their superpower status because of the sheer number of people they had that could fight and the number of nuclear weapons that they had, but they weren't an economic powerhouse. They didn't innovate and lead the world. So 69% of the people who took the poll when I did on November 30th saw that capitalism is the correct answer. I think that's important. And I think this is the scariest thing because this directly goes to Hakeem Jeffries. And I think that this YouGov poll was there for Democrats to see the temperature of the nation. And the biggest question they had is, regardless of how you feel about socialism, do you believe there is a currently an appetite for more socialist policies in the United States among the general public? I say no. 64% of those taking the poll said there is. The socialism and socialist policies are positive. 64%, 2/3 of Americans are saying that they want to have more socialist policies. The only way that you could possibly get there is if you didn't realize who are the socialists in America, what are their agendas, and what have their agendas done. When you suddenly realize that a progressive is as much of a socialist as is a socialist or a communist in American politics, that their agendas and their goals and their control are all the same, all functionally no different, well, then you look back at the policies of Barack Obama and look at that failure. Look at the failure of Joe Biden right now, the failure of Kamala Harris right now. Look at the economy, both under the Obama regime and also now under Joe Biden. Look at the failures around the world, how global instability increased under Barack Obama and under Joe Biden because the world had less respect. I think that's important to understand, that we're going to see more progressivism with Hakeem Jeffries. We're going to see more progressivism either with Joe Biden or Kamala Harris. We're going to see more of this, not less, as we go forward in time, as the party becomes more and more progressive and shifts even further and further to the left, even though the American people aren't there. But I found it really interesting that not only did Yougov ask the question about socialism, but they followed it up today, December 2nd, this morning, and they followed it up with another question about the Constitution. How well do you know the Constitution? And should there be changes to the Constitution? And according to Yougov, in a poll of 1,000 U.S. citizens, 37% of the respondents said that the Constitution is very reliable for solving today's political problems, while 24% said it's somewhat reliable. Only 15% said it's not reliable at all. I wish they would actually show that poll so that we could see those results, so we could see all the questions around it. But I think that's an important thing. There are some 61% of Americans that believe the Constitution at some level is an answer to the problems of today. 15% say it's not reliable, and most of those people tend to be Democrats and progressives in particular, like Hakeem Jeffries or Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez or Bernie Sanders, all of whom have said they want to change the Constitution. They want to change America. So what's the result of that? Let's get to the nuts and bolts of what's the consequence of this. Well, the consequence is a lack of respect and a lack of stability around the world. We hear a lot about America global warming, climate change is the biggest issue in the world. And America is the largest nation with the most and largest amount of reduction of greenhouse gases in the world. All of Europe combined, including the United Kingdom, does not equal what the United States reduces every single year. This is a fact. And yet, China emits more greenhouse gases than the United States can reduce. That's a fact. So does India. And in fact, they're going to continue to do so. This is from NPR, October 27th. China made it very clear. They emit more greenhouse gases than anyone else in the world, and they're going to continue to do so until at least 2030. India, the third largest source of emissions on the planet, is going to do the same thing. The two of the three largest nations in the world, and in terms of population, China and India, the two top nations in the world by population, are continuing to commit and emit greenhouse gases more than any nation can reduce, more than the United States can reduce in a year. The socialists have failed. No one respects them. No one fears them. No one's following their rules. China is actively looking to increase the amount of nuclear weapons that they have and their dominance of nuclear weapons to be able to push back against the United States, a superpower, in part because of our nuclear weapons advances, and to be able to, therefore, continuing its threats on Taiwan and through North Korea threatening South Korea and Japan. There is no small coincidence that the puppet of China, North Korea, has fired over 70 missiles in this year so far, threatening our allies in Southeast Asia, disrupting Southeast Asian politics, and weakening the ties between the United States and these nations, at the same time that China is also increasing the ICBMs, their hypersonic missiles, and their ability to threaten the world and the United States. Looking in Spain, the United States was the subject and target of a letter bomb. This came about, according to CNN, this happened on December 1st. And Spain is boosting their security. The U.S. Embassy is coming under attack because they have no respect, no fear of the United States. Looking at what's happening in New York City and New York State in particular, we have the progressive ideas because Kathy Hochul is a progressive. Antonio Delgado, who gave up being a congressman to be able to be the progressive running mate and the lieutenant governor of New York, is a progressive. And these progressives have now put forth an idea that they want to take $300 million from you, American citizens, take it out of your pocket so that they can pay for illegal aliens, that they want to use your money, your taxes, not to feed the poor, not to help the homeless, not to improve the living conditions and quality of life in New York State for anyone. They want to improve the ability of illegal aliens to enter the United States and to live in our country, breaking the law, and to better be able to stay here, as Democrats are promising a path to citizenship. They want to take your money and they want to use it so that they can benefit these individuals. And in fact, they say, and I quote, "We have a moral obligation to make sure that the new Americans have legal representation. Otherwise, the odds are without a lawyer, they'll be sent back to their country of origin and could face dire circumstances, including death." This is State Senator Brad Holliman and co-sponsor Catalina Cruz, out of Assemblywoman Catalina Cruz. Well, think about that sentence. We do not have a moral obligation to people who aren't Americans. These are new Americans. I love the way he says that. New Americans. No, they're not new Americans. They're illegal aliens. They didn't come here through the legal process. They didn't become naturalized citizens. If they were naturalized citizens, they wouldn't have any fear of having to go through the courts or being deported. The only people who are being deported are illegal aliens, people who broke the United States law and tried to evade the law and prosecution of the law. They are criminals. And essentially, New York State, the Democrats out of Albany are saying they want to take your money to pay criminals to be not held responsible for the crimes that they have committed. Because New York State is progressive. Because Kathy Hochul is progressive. But it's not just in the state of New York. New documents have come out. The Department of Homeland Security lied to you. They have gone on. Secretary Mayorkas lied to the public. They lied to Congress when they said that, there was no disinformation board that was already in place. They had barely had any meetings. They lied. In fact, we have documents that showed that the Disinformation Governance Board, essentially the Ministry of Truth under the Biden administration, that they were meeting since February 4th. We told they hadn't met yet. They were meeting since February 4th with the tech giants who share their ideology. Quote, another revelation from the new documents, the board's short-lived executive director, Nina Jankowicz, pushed for the Department of Homeland Security to establish a, quote, analytic exchange, end quote, with, end quote, industry partners, end quote, possibly so that big tech companies could coordinate speech suppression with the government. Think about that. They were working, this is the department, what was going to be a newly formed department to control what is information and disinformation online in your private life, what you could or could not say. They were putting together a ministry of truth to punish you for saying something that was not approved by the Biden-Harris administration. And the government, the socialists, the progressives were working hand in hand with business leaders who are also socialists and progressives as they self-identify themselves to be able to silence you, whether you're a progressive or not, whether you're a socialist or not, whether you want to believe in that ideology or not. So what does this all mean? It's been long, and I thank you for staying here with me all the way through this. So what's the final outlook? What do we take from this? We have seen the growth and continued growth of socialism and progressivism in the United States. That in the United States, at the very least, there is no true difference between a socialist and a progressive. They are interchangeable terms, interchangeable titles. They are used so that whichever is best for any given election will be the term that's going to be promoted at that time. But the overall trend has continued to be a transformation of America away from our constitutional values into some other form of government that is yet to be defined for the American people. But it is making America weaker. It is hurting our economy. It is hurting our ability to influence the globe. Nations around the world are having less and less respect for the United States and our policies and our people. I hope I've made this clear. I hope it makes sense. I went through it through some detail, and obviously this is a much bigger subject that can be handled with much more detail. But I think I made the point. If nothing else, for you to start looking at this and to understand. When your kids, when the youth, when the government is telling you socialism is good, that we're going to transform the nation, and they leave out what they're transforming it into as they pass progressive and socialist law after law, legislation after legislation, well, I think we know what the answer is. And we see what the result is. If we don't know what the problem is, we can't fix it. Well, the problem right now, a lot of it has its roots in the fact that we don't know the difference between a progressive and a socialist, a far left and a Democrat. They're all interchangeable. That's the honest answer. And the solution for America is to not follow any of them, to take a different path. But maybe you think I'm wrong. Maybe you think I haven't made my case. Maybe you think that this video wasn't very good. I don't know. I look forward to hearing what you have to say in the comments, and I look forward to seeing what you will say with us on Sunday in the live stream at 2:30 p.m. I know you've heard it before. What difference does it? You make the difference. When you watch, chat, tweets, your likes and shares and your subscription, you make the difference. From across the world, you help us to keep the lights on and the stream alive. You are making the difference to fight the woke and the crazy legislation that we see before. We at No Soundbites Allowed, and I want to thank you for everything that you do in helping us reach our goal, and your likes, your tweets, your comments, and your subscriptions to the channel. We want to thank you from the bottom of our heart. And this is a special thank you to those who have donated to the channel and helped us in all of our efforts. We will strive to make this channel the best that we possibly can, because you deserve no less.